All right, jumping on for a breaking news segment. This is pretty wild. Hillary Clinton right now, as we speak, is sitting for her deposition in front of the House Oversight Committee led by James Comer. And she ended up leaking something to everyone, even though this was supposed to be behind closed doors. But she was asking for it to be publicly. James Comer wanted to be in private. Interesting. I thought this was about transparency. Very strange, James. And then before I get to the big news here, on that, kind of for background, James Comer is leading this, what's supposed to be an investigation into Epstein and what do people know and getting to the bottom of it and how did the government botch this. But even as you hear that last element, wouldn't you be dragging every member who is a part of this cover-up of the Trump administration into this deposition long before you get to Hillary Clinton? Right now, it feels, oh, of course, if you're doing an investigation into Epstein, how the government handled the information, how do we get to transparency? You got to start with the cover-up that's going on right now. If you care about transparency and justice, what about the impediment to transparency and justice right now? Yeah, so at the top, if that's obviously any rational person's reasoning, then you would say at the top of the priority list would be, well, Trump himself maybe. But they definitely don't want to do that. And members of his administration who have engaged in just blatant, if you want to call them, as Scott Jennings would, blunders, that would be a very, very light term for what is sinister actions in impeding transparency. But no, that's not where James Comer feels the need to direct his focus. Instead, you have Hillary Clinton, which even you can make a better argument for bringing in Bill Clinton. There was definitely a record of them having, Epstein and Bill Clinton having a relationship of some kind. They say, philanthropic endeavors together, but there was a social component to their association. And anyone who shows up in that way in these documents and in photos, ask them questions for sure. But while they'll be willing to bring in Bill Clinton and even for some reason Hillary Clinton, they won't bring in Trump, and they're not actually passionate about calling up the active cover-up that's going on right now. That kind of emphasizes the ridiculousness of what James Comer and Republicans are doing here, which they only did after. Sorry, there's so much context. I promise we're going to get to this breaking news. They only did this after they were called out brutally, justifiably, but brutally, for dragging their feet and bending the knee to Trump, who was telling them, do not push for transparency. And Republicans, for a super long time, played along until there was just too much pressure on them. And then they go, well, we're taking it very seriously, so we're going to investigate it ourselves. And we need to talk to Hillary Clinton. That's who we need. That's who needs to be high up on the priority list. Now here's Wolf Blitzer reporting on what Hillary released to the public.
Hillary Clinton has just released publicly her opening statement to members of the House Oversight Committee. Right now, she's testifying as part of the committee's investigation of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Her opening statement reads in part, let me read part of the opening statement. The committee justified its subpoena to me based on its assumptions that I have information regarding the investigations into the criminal activities of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Just the quickest pause to request that you click the subscribe button, the simplest, easiest, freest way, completely free, to support the work that we do. Right below the video, click that subscribe button. Back to the video.
Let me be as clear as I can be. I do not. I had no idea about their criminal activities. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein, end quote.
And then I'll continue on. She says, like every decent person, I've been horrified, and explains by the crimes of Epstein. I feel like that, like every decent person, is a little bit of a call out to Trump, because Trump isn't horrified by what we've learned about Epstein, as she's describing herself to be, and instead calls it a hoax. Again, I just want to repeat this. This is not about, well, don't ask a Democrat about their association. Ask them, bring them in, fine. And it's an important note that if right now the most pressing issue is how, for example, the current president of the United States, as the documents is being rolled out, has allegations against them, and then documentation relating to those allegations goes missing, Maybe that guy or the people engaging in that needed to be brought in earlier than Hillary. So that's my only point. It's not about this person shouldn't be asked questions, this person. It's just the obvious attempt to use a Hillary Clinton to distract from their guy. And you can't conduct an investigation into this topic, given the relevant factors of it right now and who's in power and who's engaged in the cover-up, while also doing everything possible to tiptoe around offending Trump. It's impossible. You can't do an honest investigation while also not pissing off Trump. Clearly, we've seen, because whenever you do anything in the interest of transparency, he calls it a hoax and he freaks out, and he says you're betraying him when calling you. David Axelrod said, well, they asked for her and they got her, and Hillary Clinton isn't holding back. Her opening statement is quite a throwdown to an oversight committee that grudgingly engaged the Epstein issue under prolonged fire from his victims, but continues to tiptoe around troubling issues for fear of offending the president. So then she goes on in this opening statement to say, Mr. Chairman, your investigation is supposed to be assessing the federal government's handling of the investigation and prosecutions of Epstein and his crimes. You've held 0 public hearings, refused to allow the media to attend them, including today, despite espousing the need for transparency on dozens of occasions. This institutional failure is designed to protect one political party and one political official, Trump, rather than to seek truth and justice for the victims and survivors, as well as the public who also want to get to the bottom of this matter. My heart breaks for the survivors, and I'm furious on their behalf. So once again, you see a photo of Bill and Jeffrey, and the Clintons say this is what that was for, but that makes you go, hey, aren't we grilling everybody about their relationships? Totally fine. And the Clintons are saying, release everything you got. It's Trump who's having documentation about him, rape allegations, go missing. Big difference. She goes on to talk about her own work combating human trafficking, and then also references the disturbing truth that there are so many victims of sex trafficking in addition to Epstein's, meaning the scale of this problem is so horrific. And that kind of connects to her next point, which is that infuriatingly, the Trump administration, kind of contrasting this against her record on combating this issue, gutted the trafficking in persons office at the State Department, cutting more than 70% of the career civil and foreign service experts who work so hard to prevent trafficking crimes. The annual trafficking report required by law was delayed for months. The message from the Trump administration to the American people and the world could not be clearer. Combating human trafficking is no longer an American priority under the Trump White House. This is a tragedy. It's a scandal. It deserves vigorous investigation and oversight. A committee endeavoring to stop human trafficking would seek to understand what specific steps are needed to fix a system that allowed Epstein to get away with his crimes in 2008. A committee run by elected officials with a commitment to transparency would ensure the full release of all the files. Which, by the way, given how long this has gone, you might think we're still not having tons of documents withheld. We are. That might be news to you. It's pretty shocking. It would ensure that the lawful redactions of those files protected the victims and survivors, not powerful men and political allies. It would get to the bottom of reports that DOJ withheld FBI interviews in which a survivor accused President Trump of heinous crimes. It would subpoena anyone who asked on which night there would be the wildest party on Epstein's island. Elon. But that's not happening. Instead, you have compelled me to testify, fully aware that I have no knowledge that would assist in your investigation, in order to distract attention from President Trump's actions to cover them up despite legitimate calls for answers. If this committee is serious about learning the truth about Epstein's trafficking crimes, it would not rely on press gaggles to get answers from our current president on his involvement. It would ask him directly under oath about the tens of thousands of times he shows up in the Epstein files. If the majority was serious, it would not waste time on fishing expeditions. There's too much that needs to be done. What is being held back? Who's being protected? And why the cover up? Oh, wowza. Wowza. That, I think, as David Axelrod said, I think they might regret bringing her in. And I do appreciate that despite this, as I referenced, being a closed door deposition, she went ahead and released this publicly. And why is it closed door? Give it to the public. Let us all see. But they know that, of course, Hillary's going to call out the partisan slant to this investigation, which is not what you do if you actually are caring about getting to truth. She's also called this out publicly.
A law was passed in Congress to require that all the files that have anything to do with them be released. And What we're seeing, I think it's fair to say, is a continuing cover-up by the Trump administration. In fact, when the Attorney General testified last week, it was quite a scene because she refused to answer questions. She diverted attention away from the matters at hand. She refused to look at the survivors. So there's something about this administration's attitude toward this, which I think really leads us to conclude they have something to hide. We don't. We have been willing to say whatever we know. We've even done it under oath.
And imagine if that is how Trump had been responding to this the whole time. Because some within MAGA will try to call out some hypocritical angle of, oh, so you're, reading her opening statement and saying she's making good points, but she, or more so Bill Clinton, but maybe there was associations in philanthropic stuff or in social settings between them. And definitely a history relationship that I know for sure between Bill and Epstein. But then you're so hard on Trump. It's like, do you not see the difference? I'm saying this is not about rooting anyone on. This is saying she's calling for total transparency and she's sitting for a deposition under oath. I think she was subpoenaed, so okay. But she ended up doing it. And she's not calling it a hoax or advocating for further impediments to transparency. That's what we need from these people. Get asked questions. Don't, advocate for preventing more information from coming out, etc. And that's what we're seeing. So it's not, it doesn't need to be some partisan, if it's a politician on my side, then I trust them. But if it's a politician on the other side, then I don't. It's about watching their actions and responding to what's being disclosed. One other little breaking news piece of this is that during this deposition, which as I've now mentioned a few times was a closed door one, so you can't just be releasing photos and stuff out to the public, Lauren Boebert snapped a photo of Hillary Clinton and leaked it to Benny Johnson. So then he posts it and says, this is the first time Hillary has had to answer real questions about Epstein. Clinton does not look happy. And then they had to halt the deposition. And I think as of when I'm recording this, I think it's currently halted. They'd abruptly stop it because this unauthorized photo was released. I'm sure she doesn't care because she wanted to be public anyways, but just the way this was structured, that I guess is not, allowed. And then I find it fascinating, like when Trump goes, why don't you ever smile? Or let's move on to a different topic. Or this is a hoax. Benny Johnson goes, yeah, he shut down a reporter. Even if the question's about Epstein. But then whenever she's sitting for a deposition, not calling it a hoax, this is her looking she's not happy to have to answer these questions. That's the real hypocrisy. And she has no governmental power right now to push for transparency. Trump does. And it's his government that's preventing it. You get it.